Good morning and welcome to Ed's World, where it's always morning, even in the afternoon. I am Jay Edgar, and I am joined today by someone who's already joined one of our great Freedom Scoop podcasts, Fritz from Fritzcast. Fritz, welcome to Ed's World.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for having me. Great to be here. Great to sit down with you, man.
It is. It's going to be a really packed show today. I just set off mic a little bit before I hit the record button. This is the biggest show I think I've ever written, and given the fact I was in media blackout for the entire week, we've got a lot to go over.
Everything happens all at once, and
it all disappears out of the news all at once, just the same. Before we get started, I just want to leave a little anecdote, like I always try to do at the beginning, and I want to talk about resting and recharging, because as I've said, I spend 10 hours a day driving back and forth to work. I do my 45 hours a week at work, and then between the podcast and my solo videos every week, it's 30 more hours in there. I needed a break, and it was a working vacation, but I needed to work on my truck. But I got out, was able to get up when I felt like it, go to bed when I felt like it. I had already had my solo video done for the week, and I got to work on Saturday morning, and I felt recharged. I felt like I could do the world. It didn't happen that way. I did kind of crash while I was into it, but just the energy I've had throughout the weekend and getting ready to go back into work it's a big thing. I should practice what I preach, but it's important to take a break sometimes and go out and take care of yourself rather than taking care of everyone else around you. So keep that up. Just a couple of announcements here. Looks like there's not a lot. I'm still working on getting my civics review project out and going. We're going to be talking pretty in depth about the Declaration of Independence, and there's a lot more than a lot of people know about. I didn't know there was so much in there until I sat down and read the whole thing. So in a few weeks, we'll sit down and we'll go through that. We'll have a lot of visual aids, and it's going to be a longer episode, but I do hope that everyone else will take some time and share it with their friends as they go. As I mentioned, we have a huge show today. There were some shootings in Philadelphia, and for those of you who are watching on YouTube or BitChute, you've already seen Fritz's cup, so he's going to have some insight for that, because it looks like he's probably pretty close to there. Looks like it was a couple of different incidences, but we'll go over the details of what we've seen so far. Jeffrey Epstein remains to be in the news because another wrinkle has come out in the case of him killing himself and being in prison. So we'll talk about what happened there and what some of the new details are that have emerged and what we think about there. Rashida Tlaib decided that she wanted to go to Palestine via Israel to visit her grandmother. She was granted permission from Israel, and then she said that she didn't want to go. So we'll talk about what happened there, and Tim Pool made a pretty hot take about that, so I'll bring that forward and ask my guest what his opinion is on that. As we always do, we're going to talk a bit about 2020, and there's some developments that are going there, including the second person to drop out of that race. CNN has been a circus between Fredo Cuomo's Outburst and Don Lemon's sexual assault claims, so we'll talk just a bit about that. We've got a little bit of foreign policy going on this week between the Hong Kong protests and what they've meant for the American people, and Trump proposing that we buy Greenland, because why wouldn't he buy whatever he wants to buy? He's a billionaire. We'll close out the show today by talking about a Ben Shapiro and AOC Twitter fight and why she didn't go on his show to debate him when he invited her. It is going to be all of this and more on Ed's World. Thanks for watching this over on YouTube and on BitChute. Remember, if you like what you see, go ahead and hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. That helps YouTube decide what people should be watching. Ed's World is available on audio platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. If you're listening back to this on the audio platform, subscribe, and you'll get our new content every week, every Tuesday morning. And if you're on iTunes, hit that 5-star rating and a good review. That helps us move up the charts. Ed's World is proudly partnered with the Freedom Scoop Media Group. Freedom Scoop is still holding open interviews for writers. If you think you've got what it takes to write for an independent publication and you want your voice heard, Send me an email, edsblogtwitter@gmail.com. We will get you set up with a sample article. We'll see what your writing chops are, and we will see if we can't get you published. The introduction is always so lengthy on this show, but once you're done going through it, you get to hear about the most important part of Ed's world. So, Fritz, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right, guys. Well, I turned 30 back in May. 7 years in law enforcement, and my podcast, Fritzcast, since 2015. I cover different topics, news, pop culture, current events, politics is heavy.
Mm-hmm.
I've gone through evolution politically. I was that nerdy kid in high school that was politically aware and involved. So it was back quite a stretch, and that's where I am today.
Oh, awesome. One of the questions I always love to ask my guests when they come onto this show is how it was that you decided to get into the alternative media. How did you decide to create the Fritzcast, and what's kept you going for these 4 years so far? So, what do we got?
It's very interesting. Story. Like I said, I was that nerdy kid in high school. Really, it went back to middle school even. That nerdy kid that like listened to talk radio, like Glenn Beck. At that time, I listened to Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Fecta, radio. That's what jettisoned me into being interested in the politics. I wasn't doing political on a couple different websites. World Wrestling Insanity. I started pro wrestling writing, casting for there because the host of that website, James Gutman, he had audio shows at the time. Podcasting was kind of taking off during that time period. And he said, "Hey, man, you want to do an audio show?" And I was like, I always wanted to get into broadcasting because of that. I always wanted to explore getting into broadcast media, especially radio. I just loved turning on these shows and listening and hearing people call in, having that dialogue, having that discussion, the opinions, all of that stuff. And so I did that for a little bit, freelance. Worked on his website, did a weekly audio show for about a year that covered pro wrestling. But I fell out of interest in that. Still kind of kept the passion, but life got in the way. You know, I didn't have the means or the opportunity to go to broadcasting schools or anything like that. And breaking into any mainstream broadcasting, whether it's news, whether it's the radio, whether it's anything else, starts with internships. Mm-hmm. And I was in a position where, couldn't work for free. And some of them even had caveats that said you couldn't take up a part-time internship or you couldn't have a full-time job on top of working for the studios. So, it left me in a kind of a void. And then 2015, my wife actually bought me some of the baseline equipment for the computer on it. She said, "Hey, you listen to podcasts all the time. You talk about how you'd love to do it. Why not just do it?" And I thought, this is crazy. Like, I'm just supposed to hook up a microphone and start, Mm-hmm. I plugged in a microphone into my computer and sat down to record my first episode, and it was a very awkward walk through of how I wanted to do this. Because aside from all the professional shows at that time, I'd only known about the high quality professional shows. I was going off of that. After I started that, I kicked up research and found, a bunch of people do this. A bunch of people are small, independent little people that create their own shows. They do their own thing. And I found it to be just, a bit more genuine than everything that's out there and readily available.
And that's one of the big things that kind of launched me too, is just you're a little guy. There's so many other little guys out there, and it's genuine. It's not scripted. You're not fighting for sponsors. You're saying what's on your mind, and if people want to listen to it, they'll tune in.
Yep. I mean, that's such a. I don't have an angle. I don't have sponsors that I'm trying to get money from at this point. This is a self-funded endeavor. I put money into it. I put money into it. I don't get money back yet. I'm not really even concerned about getting money back yet because I enjoy, sitting behind this microphone and running my show the way that I want to run it.
Perfect. Well, if you're satisfied with that, I think it's time to go back down on the dark note, and we'll talk about these Philadelphia shootings. We're going to start there. So, from what I saw when I first saw this, I just got to my mom and dad's house. They had the news on, and it was still an ongoing situation on Wednesday afternoon. Late in the day on Wednesday, Maurice Hill was in the middle of having a standoff with the police in a developing story, and I wasn't able to catch up with much more of that because I was so busy throughout the rest of the week. But from what I was able to catch up with after this, it seems that were they trying to serve a warrant to him when he opened fire on them, or?
I believe the details were that they were going to serve a warrant because there was drug activity believed to be going on in the home. That's the last detail that I recall reading on the situation. And when they approached the house, he opened fired on them.
And when I did some more research on this, from what I found out from this, Maurice Hill was already barred from owning firearms. He had a long rap sheet ahead of him, including several gun possession charges. He was to be arrested for gun possession. That was one of the charges that they were going in for him on. And this looked like something that was going to be a major news story because it involved the AR-15, but it seemed to drop off, and I do think that this has to do with the fact that he was already barred from owning guns.
I can, not to interrupt you, but I can thoroughly believe that point that you just said. Barred from owning guns.
Mm-hmm.
Already convicted, already having a status that did not allow him to legally obtain firearms, yet he illegally attained them.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things, too, when we're looking through this, when we're talking about this. One of the things that we expected here, because we hear it after every time that there's a mass shooting, is what new laws are we going to introduce to stop this from happening again? And in the last few shootings that we saw assailants that had legally obtained their firearms. But in this case, we didn't have that. We had somebody who was going around the law, so no additional law was going to do anything about this. So this is just, it's got the boogeyman gun, but we can just sweep this under the rug because it doesn't fit our narrative.
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of that go on. Like, all of a sudden, it's not a talking point anymore. And this was a big thing. This lasted for hours.
Yeah.
And this guy fired off probably hundreds of rounds of ammunition in a standoff with the cops. He injured 6 of them.
Mm-hmm.
He's shooting, across the street. I mean, some of the footage was a little harrowing to see, like cops ducked underneath of cars and bullets ricocheting off the street across houses across the street.
Yeah. This is the kind of thing that we see in action movies and cop movies. This is not the kind of thing we see on the nightly news.
No, and this isn't a typical everyday occurrence in America either.
But it's the narrative that we keep going back to. I mean, let's think about some of the mass shootings that we saw last year. The nut job down in Houston. Or it wasn't Houston. It was outside Dallas. It fell out of the news so fast we forgot where it was. The kid went to school with a shotgun and a handgun.
Yeah.
We can't outlaw those. Biden said that every house needs a shotgun. We can't talk about that.
That much is true. Joe Biden quoted saying that a shotgun is a perfect home defense weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Being in Delaware here.
Yeah. We might have... I'm going to keep an eye on the situation here, but I might have to change how we're communicating here because I'm losing some of your audio on this. But I'm going to keep it going for right now. But if it doesn't improve in the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to change us over. But let's go back to what we were talking about. Yeah, the shotgun is the perfect home defense. I mean, this home is defended by one, so why not? But it's the same. The Virginia shooting that happened just a little bit ago. A guy went in with a handgun. What have we heard about that since then? We got no closure. The guy got shot by the cops.
They don't follow up on those stories because they don't fit a narrative of somebody that went into a school with an AR-15 who went into a Walmart with an AR-15. The narrative that's always pushed with that is big, scary black rifle.
Mm-hmm.
Of some of the terminology they use. They always say weapon of war, assault weapon. It's always what's pushed, and it's always the picture of the big, black, scary gun.
Well, yeah, I just saw on Twitter this morning, too, somebody had asked a person what constitutes an assault rifle, and a person actually, bless his heart, responded and said, well, carries high-capacity magazines and is designed for killing the maximum amount of people in a maximum or a minimum amount of time. And I'm just thinking to myself, the Ruger 223 can do the same thing an AR-15 can. It just doesn't have the composite and nobody cares about it.
I mean, you know, one of my personal home weapons is a Glock 22.
Mm-hmm.
It's got magazines. You havoc if you have magazines. Go in and you can do with it.
All right.
Automatic handgun.
We gotta do some little bit of on-air production here. I'm gonna cut the video here. We will join back with you in just a couple of minutes. I gotta change what's going on here. So we will be right back. And we are back. We're gonna see if this works out any better, because yeah, like you heard in the beginning, we were only getting every third word for a little while. And we were talking about the shotgun as the home defense, and Fritz was telling us about his 22 that is the perfect weapon for home defense. But that was where it started getting really bad. So let's hear about that one more time.
All right. So as I was saying, like one of my personal home weapons is a Glock 22. That's a handgun, 40 caliber. I have 3 magazines, 15 rounds each. That's a lot of ammo just right there.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who is willing to do something horrific, can have as many of those magazines as they want.
Mm-hmm.
They can do just about as much damage as anybody with an AR-15 can, if not worse, because they could conceal that.
Absolutely. And then, I mean, there are modifications for handguns, too. There are extended magazines for those.
There's extended mags. There's illegal modifications that anybody can do to anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I get the media narrative is always just the big scary gun, though.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the point that most of the responsible gun owners are bringing up, and people who actually think this argument through, is that it's AR-15s now. Yeah. And then they could ban long guns, sure. Then what are they going to do when all the stories factor over to people with handguns? Then it's going to be, we got to get rid of the handguns. It's not just an end goal of banning one specific type of firearm. The end goal for those people ideally is no guns whatsoever.
That's absolutely true. But they're not going to come out and say that either. They're going to try and push it through one piece at a time.
Yeah, they one piece at a time, very methodically.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't do it that way, they can't accomplish it. They can accomplish it in baby steps. That's something that I talk about a lot with people when it comes to politics and policy and how the government works. A lot of it doesn't, it's not the snap of the fingers and it's not overnight. It's very meticulously plotted out, item by item.
And speaking of handgun violence, it seems that Philadelphia wasn't finished when they took care of Maurice Hill, it seems that there have been a series of shootings littering around the city for the last few days, going from Friday into Saturday. Several people were killed by handguns. There have been no arrests made at this time. And what have you seen about this so far, especially you being so much closer to it?
I mean, that's something that it's probably. I'd probably honestly say it's not even an uptick. It's probably just a normal day. We had one here in Delaware just 2 days ago, where there was a shooting. Honestly, not far from where I live. That involved at least one person being killed, possible others injured, but they're not sure because they weren't able to track down everybody that was involved in it.
Yeah, it's from what I saw, it was, one kid got pistol whipped by the gun. They killed his dad in front of him, and it's been random spattering violence. And when I look at a news story like this, I see that it probably cropped up and hit national news because it was so close after the situation with Maurice Hill. But what I always say when I talk about mass shootings is they do the reports in these relatively affluent white areas, and it makes national news, and we talk about it for a long time. But when it's like what we saw with 4 people killed just last week, that's Tuesday in Chicago.
Yeah. Inner cities are plagued with that level of violence, and it does go under the wayside. It's never a national narrative. It's never the central focus, when in all reality, and you probably agree with me, it should be talked about more.
It should.
But it's not their selling point.
Yeah.
That's not their big attraction. That's not what gets everybody talking.
And it also seems to happen in municipalities and states that are controlled by these municipalities that have heavy gun restriction already. No, I'm sure there's a population point to go into there because these are so much more populated. So, of course, they're going to have more incidences there. It's kind of like the Swift trucking theory. Everyone says that the trucking company Swift has got the worst drivers in the world because they have more accidents than any other trucking company in the world. But they also have 5 times as many trucks as the next trucking company in the world.
Yeah, and that boils down to what's the word I'm thinking of? Not correlation, but God, I'm blanking on the word.
I can't think what you're looking for either. I mean, it does correlate. It's population based, but yeah.
But basically, yeah, you have a company that's 5 times larger
than
the
its
other
next competitor.
They're going to have more accidents.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that they're the worst. They're just going off of a bigger number. That's something that we were talking about. I was talking with somebody earlier this week on Twitter about gun violence. Like, the numbers on gun violence that are pushed when they talk about these narratives include gun deaths that are suicide.
Absolutely.
Which drives the number up, because I think it's like 2/3 of gun homicide or of gun deaths are suicide. And when you have that driving up the number so high, some people will argue and say, well, you shouldn't take the suicides out because it's still death by gun. Those people might not have committed suicide if they didn't have access to a gun.
They would have.
You can argue that all you want. Japan has a higher suicide rate than we do, and they have stricter gun laws, especially against handguns.
Well, and Japan has a forest where they go and do it too, so.
Exactly.
It's known for that. That weirds me out to no end.
That is a little creepy.
I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but yeah, I think we should be shedding more light on what's happening in the inner cities and try and correct that before we try and take care of some of these one-offs out in the middle. Well, we should be paying attention to these one-offs anyway. Speaking of statistics, that's interesting too, because once again, like I say, we don't hear about any of the shootings in Chicago or anything, and they don't get factored in when people start talking about how many mass shootings we've had in the year. Yet, they consider a suicide that somebody committed on a site that used to be a school that is no longer a school as a school shooting.
Yeah, I mean, that is talk about skewing your data. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you know, and you see that a lot too when you break into the numbers. You'll see if it happened on the grounds, if it happened on the confines. There's shootings that were counted as school shootings that happened on school premises, but at night when the school was not operational.
Or my favorite one is the suicide on the former school wasn't my favorite one. My favorite one was a police training simulation that they were having at a school during hours, and officer's gun went off in the holster in his hip, and they called that a school shooting.
Ouch. No, that's an accident.
Yes,
That's what that is.
absolutely. But it counts. According
Yeah,
to Newtown, it counts.
yeah. Well, and Newtown, here's the thing. Newtown has an agenda to spread that. That's their sole purpose. Their sole purpose is to be pushing for gun control.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the data is going to be skewed from them. The sad fact is that people will take it as at face value though. Instead of diving in and reading the story like you did
Yeah.
and getting that detail, getting that little caveat in there that's like, it's not actually a school shooting. Come on. More people often than not aren't going to look at that. They're just going to say, well, this says right here. It says it. So,
Well, we're very far off topic on what happened in Philadelphia, but
yeah,
we got a lot of good information out of it. Let's talk about Epstein.
Oh, boy.
Now, to catch everybody up with what's been going on with the Epstein case, Epstein committed suicide in his cell last weekend. It was the Saturday before my last show, actually, and it completely changed what my last show was going to be. Now, more details have come out, and the medical examiner has officially ruled it a suicide, but the internet conspiracy machine will never stop, and we are seeing some of the facts that are not consistent so far with the suicide, including several broken bones in Epstein's neck, and the fact that his fight or flight instinct didn't kick in when he was kneeling forward with both feet firmly on the ground, trying to strangle himself with a bed sheet. There's also been reports that there was screeching coming from the cell while he was getting ready to kill himself, but there are other reports that said that he didn't. And of course, the convenience of the camera being out. Now, you focused your last show entirely on this, so I want you to kind of walk us through a little bit of what you've seen so far, and this will give you a little bit of a chance to self-promote again, but I just got done listening to that, by the way. Before.
True. So Epstein is my favorite conspiracy theory thing going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this before we started recording off air, but it's going to be talked about for quite some time. And honestly, it's just because there's too many conveniences going on here for such a high profile case.
Mm-hmm.
I get to speak a little bit from experience from my work background, but and that's the number one question that I get asked right now. Just based on my experience, what do I think about this story? Jeffrey Epstein, and I didn't even know before I did that episode. I didn't even know the timeline about how he got busted prior and did his time, but clearly his money influence was there in his sentencing last time. Clearly his money influence was there with, I think he only got like 18 months for soliciting prostitution from a minor, which, unless you're a billionaire, that doesn't happen. It's not just 18 months, but I've been telling everybody the only conspiracy I believe going on is the official story that's getting pushed.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's and the information comes out in trickles. Like, I had this discussion the other day. When they did his autopsy, they started releasing those news headlines about how the ME wanted more information before they could make a determination of his cause of death. And I'm like, how much more information can you need? You mentioned the broken bones coming out. They said the broken bones that it can happen from strangulation via suicide, but it also more so lined up with that of people who are strangled to death in a homicide. So, with all that information going on, and the inconsistencies that we have from inside the prison, which that's life. I tell people every day, pretty much you don't know what's going on behind the walls of a prison unless you are locked up, you have somebody locked up, or you have somebody that works in a prison. You know, the transparency just isn't there.
Well, yeah, I mean, all these people are being deprived of their rights due to the fact that they've committed a crime. I'm sure that I would expect there to be some level of secrecy into that.
A little bit, a little bit. And then everything just seems a little too convenient to line up. I mean, there are, just like you said, we do need a level of secrecy with that. It's a security issue. It's a security risk. Jeffrey Epstein being as high profile as he was, that comes with beefing things up. I mean, any prison anywhere it's a high profile offender or suspect like that, and you usually get rid of the riot act of, you know, you're supposed to be on your P's and Q's all the time, but definitely be on them now, like 200%. And that's where, you know, they say guards were sleeping. He went unchecked for hours. He was on suicide watch. Then he wasn't on suicide watch. He had a cellmate, but his cellmate was transferred out. You know, what's going on here?
Yeah, there were a lot of moving parts that needed to happen exactly as they happened. Otherwise, this couldn't have happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
This is the perfect, well, it would be the perfect suicide if we all believed it was a suicide, but this is the perfect crime.
Yeah.
This is like Ocean's 11 level of preparedness and things having to happen the way that they happen.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Like, you know, the other thing is that he's this billionaire guy who at least went through this court proceeding process once before. And getting caught now with all the high profile names that you have, I figure there's some collateral damages there to the point where I don't see Epstein as just lying down and taking it or wanting to find a way out. I read him more as the vindictive type who's like, all right, you got me locked up, but guess what? You're all going down too.
And I think that would have played something into that. And I mean, that's what we've been discussing from the moment that he got picked up this last time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who's he going to take down with him, and who's going to kill him for it?
Yeah, his black book is full of names. And just the powerful people he rubbed elbows with from President Trump on down. A lot of people don't talk about the Trump link-ups and aspects, I guess, because of how long it had been they had interacted with each other or whatever. But I believe there was something about how he had 17 different phone numbers for Donald Trump.
Did you watch Stephen Ignoramus's episode, I think it was last Tuesday, where he got his hands on a redacted version of the book and he just went through the book for an hour and a half?
No, I didn't get to see all of it.
Yeah.
And it's bookmarked for me. It's still in my cycle to watch, but I mean that's a buttload of information.
Yeah.
I mean that's insane.
Stephen is just a machine for going through it like that. I couldn't believe it. I was watching that.
He is. Yeah.
Now, we've talked to death about all the inconsistencies, and you've dedicated an entire episode to it already on your show, but there's one thing that hasn't really been talked to death. I have seen a couple of commentators comment on it, but for the most part, it's something that we haven't really paid attention to, and that's the 4chan aspect of this. Now, I was driving to my dad's, as I mentioned last week, and about middle of the trip, I turned Styx's channel on and listened to that in my truck. And That was one of the first stories that he popped up and talked about, was the fact that an hour before the mainstreams started talking about the fact that Epstein had killed himself, a random anonymous poster on 4chan posted that Epstein had killed himself.
I do briefly recall seeing this. Was this one? Was that the post that alleged they worked in that facility?
I did not see the details, and I don't know if he alleged that he worked in the facility, but just the fact that this was revealed an hour before everybody else got a hand to it. Just it shook the internet for about an hour, and then something else happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's just more bizarre to the bizarre of the whole story. Um, I don't know what to make of that. Heads or tails.
Hmm.
That that's kind of baffling to me.
Yeah, I don't know. That just adds to me the idea that this was a conspiracy and this was planned. I mean, the person who made the original post has not come forward. It is to my understanding that 4chan knows who it is, but has not released any of the name. But I mean, that adds another wrinkle to this entire conspiracy theory. And again, this is something we're going to be talking about for 30 years. I said off mic before we started recording. I mean, this when they reboot King of the Hill for the third time, this is what Dale Gribble's going to be talking about on every episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeffrey Epstein escaped. He's in Castro's nuclear-powered escape sub, and they subbed somebody else's body in for it. I can already hear it.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it's interesting because the brunt of the conspiracy theories aren't that he's still alive somewhere, but in all honesty,
I gotta have my mirrored sunglasses on to do the Dale Gribble.
yeah. But in all honesty, I mean, think about this. Wasn't it a day after he's found dead, suicide, that the FBI's raiding his private island?
I think that was scheduled beforehand, though. That's the thing.
Was it?
I believe it was, yes.
All right, if it was, fair enough. It just seemed very odd to me that, the news came out, oh, he's dead, hey, and the FBI's raiding his private island. But if it was scheduled beforehand, fair enough. Good on you, government.
This has been one of the biggest things that's united the left and the right for this, for the time being. It's one of the most united I've ever seen the right and the left ever in my 35 years of existence. But I think we've all determined the fact that Epstein he didn't kill himself. We've all determined that. There's some nefarious force outside, and it might not be the Clintons, it might not be the Trump thing. He might have got popped for being a kitty diddler.
Yeah, I mean, basic enough. With the charges that he had, everybody locked up hated him. I mean, he's a target to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's the target among pretty much everybody else, But to echo your point, yeah, we did all unify because we're all dead sure that what's being sold to us isn't what actually happened.
So with that being said, I want to ask you the question here. Is he alive or dead?
I believe he's dead. Through and through. I don't believe that he got carted out of there and he's hiding out on some other private island. There was actually a good conspiracy theory that he was one of the FBI agents that raided the island.
Well, that goes back to the Ocean's 11 crack that I made earlier.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe he is. Maybe he's just chilling on his island now because nobody's going to think to look there. But
he walked out of the prison in FBI gear, just like they took the money out of the Bellagio vault.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody
would suspect that.
Wow.
Nobody would suspect that. And then the unfortunately the officers that are on suspension right now. I mean, obviously they took a hefty pay. Somebody showed up with a suitcase full of money and said, "Hey, look away for 15 minutes," and you don't know what happened here. Believable, completely believable.
Well, before I have to go into the next room and go get my roll of aluminum foil here, I think it's time for us to talk about Rashida Tlaib.
Oh, okay. All right.
We are
Good segue.
we are running up on the clock, so we do have to try and keep it a little bit moving here.
We can. We
Yeah.
can. I can stop with the ranting.
So Rashida Tlaib had made an announcement that she was planning on going to Israel to go. Well, she was going to Palestine through Israel down to the West Bank to visit her sick grandmother. Israel actually capitulated. They said, "Yeah, just don't talk about BDS while you're here, and you'll be fine. Come on in." Tlaib then turned around and said that she was not going to go for reasons of restricting her free speech, but Tim Pool did have a hot, spicy take about that. But now she's not going, and this was in the news, and now we're all talking about the squad again. So, what have you seen on this so far?
In reading up on it, just at face value, the whole scene, the whole thing, seems like it was like fabricated to me almost. Just because, like you said, it was extended from Israel to her on a diplomatic courtesy to let her come in, and it wasn't going to be an issue. The only issue was the BDS stuff, and then just it suddenly became a talking point of, well, I'm not going to go because that's suppressing my freedom of speech.
Which you do that in any other country anyway.
Yeah. I mean, you basically agreed to terms and conditions of visiting. That's all you've done, and it baffled me how quickly it happened. And I have something highlighted here from this story specifically. It was Bill Maher that talked about it.
Oh yes, I forgot to put that in the notes, but yeah, that was. I saw that story, and the first thing I did is I tweeted out and I said, "I love watching the left eat their own. Who wants some popcorn?"
Yeah, I mean, and it's sad because more often than not, you'll find Bill Maher being sensible, and it's weird because years ago I would have told you, I don't listen to Bill Maher, he's crazy. But let me see here. The article is saying she reversed course, saying that she believes that they were silencing her, quote, silencing me and treating me like a criminal is not what she wants for me. That's what her mother was saying, or her grandmother was saying. But Bill Maher came out and criticized her for the things that she had said, because she said things like it's all about the Benjamins, Israel has hypnotized the world, may Allah awaken the people and help them see their evil doings of Israel.
Well, that's the other one.
Yeah, for Tlaib.
That was Omar.
Oh, that was Omar?
Mm-hmm.
Correct, that was Omar. But still, very just off the wall. It was set up for you to go. There was really no controversial issue there, but you made it. You made it a controversial issue, and for what?
Well, and after all of this too, Israel came back and they said that, we changed our mind. You're going to be like this. You're not coming over. And a lot of the conspiracy people and a lot of the people who are just generally not fans of the president have said now that Israel backed down not because of any sort of national pride or security or anything. It's just because Trump was tweeting about it.
True. And that is, again, it's almost like there's a playbook. When all else fails, just bring up Trump and talk about something that he tweeted, and obviously that's the big problem. Now I don't buy that. Sorry, I don't buy that. I don't buy that in the slightest, because Israel extended their hand to you. They said, all we want, and Israeli law says, don't let people in that criticize of that matter. And the BDS is riddled with controversy over whether or not they are legitimate or if they're anti-Semitic.
Oh, absolutely. And, that's a part of the thing, too, that's really bothering me about this, because there are so many people that are citing the anti-Semitism of Rashida and Ilhan, which, given their religion, I can understand a bit of anti-Semitism. I don't agree with it necessarily, but That's been going on for 1,500 years.
Yeah.
And if you trace back Muhammad's lineage, that's been going on for 4,000 years.
Yeah.
That's not a new thing.
No, this is not a new squabbling. This isn't something that just lit up within the last couple of decades. It's been going on almost forever, it would seem.
But I mean, there's also a difference between anti-Semitism and anti-Israel, which BDS is absolutely anti-Israel, but the sentiments of these two congresswomen are anti-Semitic rather.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have a hard time, I guess, separating the two, separating Israel and anti-Semitism, and it's like asking, do I like everything that Israel's doing? Am I that big Republican, conservative, absolutely pro-Israel everything? No. There's things to criticize for sure, but there's that question of how you're doing it and why you're doing it.
Now, one of the things that I saw in this story recently, I was listening to Tim Pool in the truck last night, and he brought up a spicy take that I never would have thought of on this. The theory that he laid out when he was talking about it was the fact that Rashida Tlaib came up with this trip and decided that she wanted to go, fully expecting Israel to say, no, don't come into our country, because she wanted to make a scene about it and wanted to make that be the scene. And now when she turned around and said that she didn't want to go anymore, that had something to do with the fact that they said, oh, well, come on in. Just don't talk bad about us while you're here.
That Tim Pool had that yesterday? Or
That was a few days ago, but I was just catching up on podcasts last night while I was driving.
Huh. No, I mean, that's something that I never would have thought of.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, not surprising though, what does the squad do most? Find opportunities.
Yeah. Find controversies out of nothing.
Yeah, out of that. And I could absolutely buy that. That you went in looking for a fight for it, didn't get it, and you had to backtrack to get it. I mean, that's a very interesting take. I'll have to, because I'm pretty sure Tim's material is in my backup to catch up on as well, and I look forward to hearing that more in depth from him if he goes more in depth into that.
Yeah, I think that was Friday's show. I don't know. I didn't catch the date. I just had stuff on autoplay. I had a 2-hour drive yesterday that I had to do. So.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, we'll see what develops from this. I got this feeling that this is a story that may not be over, but again, this is going to be another one of those things that gets swept under the rug. Let's take that story and use that as a jumping board to talk about something that we are going to be hearing about next week, the week after, and up until November of next year, and that's going to be 2020. Now, we've had some developments with the candidates that are running for president in 2020, including we've had another official dropout from the race. John Hickenlooper has decided to suspend his campaign at this point, feeling that he doesn't see a way forward from where he's at. Which lends credence to the fact that Brady Leonard said when Hickenlooper got in that there is never going to be a President Hickenlooper. We are never going to have to say that name every day. So,
right.
Props to Brady for that. So, is there anybody that needs to follow suit at this point?
A ton of them. For real. I believe me and Stephen Ignoramus talked a little bit about it. I'm all for having more voices in the mix.
Yeah.
For sure. But let's be honest. The debate formats right now for the Democrats, and even you can go back to 2016 when there was 17 Republicans running. Mm-hmm. When you have that many people on a stage, even if you break it down into 10 and 10, you have a 3-hour news spectacle of maybe a total of 5 or 10 minutes of each of them talking. And at the end of the day, you don't really accomplish anything because all they're actually doing, And they've all admitted it. Bernie Sanders has admitted it. All you're really doing is trying to get your soundbite. All you're really doing is trying to get your one laser focused point out to stand out in the crowd and win in the polling to come back for the next round of debates. So Hickenlooper's out. Swalwell's out, right?
Yep. Swalwell, he was the first one out.
He was the first one out, rightfully so. He was polling at like negative 5% or whatever. That field really, for the Democrats, just strategically speaking, they really need to start narrowing it down. Because if they have a hope of taking on Trump, they're going to have to figure out who their candidate is, and quick. Because everything else is just a circus. You have Marianne Williamson up there saying dark psychic force, you know, and everybody's like, what is this witch doing on stage? I don't get it. And then among other things, you have Yang talking about universal basic income, you know, $1,000 a month for all of you. I mean, just really, it's a very crowded field. This is why people are petitioning to have Joe Rogan do a presidential debate, which I signed, by the way.
When we get off air, you want to link that to me so I can too?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have it. I'm pretty sure I have it handy. But
I definitely want some of that action.
Yeah, I mean, because at least, did you listen to like Joe Rogan's episode with Bernie Sanders?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, so like that was probably the first time ever that I didn't hear Bernie Sanders yelling at a podium like a crotchety old man, you know? Like, I still don't agree with a lot of, you know, his policy positions and his philosophy, but at least he got to sit down and discuss them at length and kind of get into the madness behind his logic.
Yeah.
You know? And that's something that I support way more than this crowded, you know, the spectacle that the news throws on for us.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, too. And we're looking at Democratic debates, and we're looking at networks that are going to pander to everything that they say, no matter how different that they are with each other. And, yeah, okay, Rogan would be a good host for a debate. You know, we could go in a different direction with that, too. What if Freedom Scoop hosted a Democrat debate? We go rent a nice hall somewhere, and we fly John and Robert up here, and we fly Steven out here, and we all sit down, get together, and start asking people questions. We're not constrained by the CNN time clock. We're not constrained by prime time or anything. We have all the time in the world.
Yeah, this podcasting, long-form media, whatever you want to call it, I don't have a backer.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about doing a commercial break, you know. I don't have to worry about how much money I'm going to make dropping my next episode. And honest to God, if that happens more and more, I like that for the political outlook of America versus what NBC or CBS or Fox wants to put on.
Well, we talked about Hickenlooper dropping out. I want to touch on another candidate that should be dropping out, and it was actually the candidate that I hoped was going to be dropping out this week, because I may or may not have put some money down on that. I was reading through Twitter one day, and I had to tweet out after I saw the tweet, what are the Vegas odds that this candidate is dropping out? Because he made an announcement that he was going to be making an announcement. I don't know why you make an announcement to make an announcement, but he scheduled an announcement, and of course I'm talking about Robert Francis O'Rourke.
Oh, Beto.
He made the announcement that he was going to be making an announcement. That was the first thing I thought is he dropping out? Who wants to lay bets that he's dropping out? What are the Vegas odds that he's dropping out? But no, of course he is relaunching his campaign and apparently reformatting it.
So you need to do an announcement about relaunching your campaign. I mean, I'm still asking him I'm still asking if he's changed the truck tire yet. You saw that video, right?
I have.
Like these videos are a little just too much for me. Where I'm like, oh, look, Beto O'Rourke's changing a truck tire. Look how normal he is.
Yeah, Beto is painful.
just like it was just like Elizabeth Warren's, in the kitchen. I'm live streaming. Oh, I'll have a beer. Oh, here's my husband. Like, what are you doing? What? Why? Why? And by the way, Beto, you were changing the truck tire wrong. But that's beside the point.
How many do you think he makes it? Well, I've looked at the. That's actually a question we should be asking every time we talk about one of these. Do you think he makes it onto the next debate because they changed the format? 2%.
2%?
Yeah.
He probably makes it. I don't get Beto O'Rourke's appeal. I really don't. I mean, for a while they were like banking on him being the superstar. People were like, "Oh, he's going to be our presidential candidate." And I'm like, "He lost to freaking Ted Cruz."
Well, they were talking about that while he was still running against Ted Cruz.
Yeah, he hadn't even won yet. And they were like, "This guy is going to take our platform places it's never gone before." But, get off the table, Francis.
I'm going to tear down existing wall.
Yeah, I mean, he always says something that's just, and it's always the hand movements too. He's always moving his hands. I had this thing for a while where everything that Beto posted on Twitter, I would go on and I would just respond with a GIF or a GIF. However you want to pronounce it.
Oh, I'm
Either
hard
way.
G all the way.
Huh?
I'm hard G all the way.
A hard G all the way? All right. I posted the wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man just every time, just doing it, and I wouldn't even say anything, just do that, and then anytime I would find that used, anytime I saw the wacky waving I would just go, oh hey look, Beto O'Rourke was here.
Well, the thing with Beto is that he's been fairly steady in his polling numbers. He hasn't really spiked. He hasn't really dropped. But Kamala Harris, on the other hand, had a flash in the pan after the first debate, and she's dropping like a stone after the second debate. I mean, we couldn't even call this a flash in the pan the other way. It is just a straight down drop since the last debate. And I don't know if she's going to recover from that or not.
I don't either, because I guess she learned very quickly that being America's prosecutor isn't the popular thing to go off of, because I loved when Tulsi Gabbard just kind of eviscerated her on stage. She was like, oh, she locked up all these people for smoking marijuana. And then she was asked about it, and she laughed, Like, she had that popularity going for her, and I think it's more so that, especially the shot she took at Joe Biden for whatever he said in the 70s,
Yeah.
That's the number one Democratic go-to thing. Well, Joe Biden in the 70s said, he didn't like busing. And then she says that, she acts like she's incredibly offended about it. And then somebody does a little research and goes, oh, you know what? Her stance on federal busing is exactly the same as Joe Biden's. So does she recover from it? I don't know. I honestly don't think so, because if they're going off the polling data anyway, Biden is still far and ahead of most any other candidate that they have up there. And in the polling numbers, Biden is the one that beats Trump, not anybody else.
Well, and I don't necessarily think that the entirety of Kamala Harris's problem is what happened to her with Tulsi Gabbard. Because Kamala Harris is a very authoritarian figure. Now, a lot of the left base is really appreciative of that, and we see a lot of that when we see left-wing Twitter and we go and comment with them. But, I mean, Barack got cheered by his base for expanding the powers of the executive branch. But then everybody panicked when somebody they didn't like get into the executive branch. Kamala Harris makes Barack Obama look like a liberty candidate.
Yeah, almost. I mean,
this whole 100 days thing is just that's the line for me right there.
Yeah, well, can you repeat that one more time?
This whole 100 days thing. You have 100 days to make a gun control law, or I'm going to do it from the executive office.
Yes. She is building up that I will rule with an iron fist type of thing. And I suppose for extreme progressives, they probably like it.
Hmm.
But I think more middle ground America, which I believe more of us are somewhere in the middle there,
Yeah.
not on these fringes. More of us are in the middle, and more of us, when we hear that, go, you know what? I don't like that. I don't like somebody saying that, they're just going to do it. That's not how this whole process works. That's not how any of this is supposed to work.
Well, I mean, that takes, I've got a pen and a phone to the whole new level.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You have 100 days, or I will get it done, or I will do something. Well, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do outside of that pesky Constitution?
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny how often people walk away from the constitutional setup of things. I mean, if it's not your candidate ruling with an iron fist, I think the second most thing you hear is people saying, "Well, we got to pack the Supreme Court to go our way,"
Hmm.
and they just completely ignore the fallacy of how it's all authoritarian setup of complete control.
Well, they want the authoritarianism because they want people like us taken down and off the air.
That's true.
Did you see the
That's true.
trailer for The Hunt?
No, I did not. But
Yeah, one of the people that they captured because they were hunting is somebody who was sitting behind a podcast microphone. Just it was the exact same model as the one I started my show with.
yeah,
It was this one.
yeah, okay, yeah, it's nuts. But
They want the authoritarianism because we're speaking to people on a regular level.
yeah, and I never understand why people are drawn to that. Just right now, you have Orange Man in the hot seat, and you don't like it because he's some fascistic leader or whatever. And your call to countering that is to increase authoritarianism just on your side,
Yeah.
just for you, because your authoritarianism is better. It's more just than this authoritarianism over here.
Well, speaking of the Orange Man, we've got one more story from 2020 that I want to touch on. It's probably going to be a quick hitter here, and that is our good UBI friend Andrew Yang, who has decided that he is going to win any physical competition against a 70-year-old man.
Oh man, he has done that, and he's done dance-offs with Tim Ryan too.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
And he was crying over some of this too. I didn't catch everything where he was crying over that, but I mean, the whole thing. I could win any physical competition against Donald Trump. Donald Trump is twice your age, Andrew.
He's twice your age. He's probably never been in shape because he hasn't had to be.
Yeah.
And but at what are you trying to prove with that anyway? I mean, you know, aside from just oh, I'm stronger than you. I don't get it though. I don't get that, and I can't make sense of that. I can't.
Well, I mean, it's funny to hear Biden say that he wants to have a push-up conversation or a contest with Trump on the debate stage, but they're the
Did
same
Biden
age.
say that?
He did say
Did-
that. They're the same age. Coming from Yang, who is supposed to be the everyman candidate, that's just mean. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that is. I mean, come on, Yang. You're doing yoga classes with people and broadcasting it online. Trump's never done a yoga class in his life. He's not flexible, man.
Uh, well, this is a circus, but before I get out of 2020, I always ask every guest the same three questions. So, first question, based on the statistics on the polling that you've seen through the past week and what we've seen aggregated over the past 7 months, which candidate do you think makes it to the end and is the nominee statistically right now?
Uh, I still, I have yet to see how it's not Joe Biden. I've yet to see it. Everybody wants to say Sanders is going to make some kind of swing or whatever, but still, with all the with all the stuff that I guess you could dig out on Joe Biden, because he does say a lot of stupid things.
He does.
He's unaffected by it. So as of right now, Joe Biden.
All right. So the next question is based on what you see from the candidates themselves. So say something happens to the Donald. He can't be the president anymore, and Mike Pence can't drum up enough of a campaign at the last minute. You have to pick one of the 24 candidates that are out there right now to be the next president. Which one is the lesser of 24 evils for you?
Is that just Democrats or the whole field?
Just Democrats.
I can only pick one, right?
Only pick one. If you want to throw a running mate on there, dude, that might be an interesting aside.
That's Yang at least seems more level-headed. And at least you've heard Yang say things like, I'm reaching out to Republicans and libertarians, and he doesn't mind talking about common unity.
Okay.
So I could go off of that. The only other one I could really go off of, and if I was boiled down to like single issue and the world tensions are really heating up, Tulsi Gabbard, because she won't just drop a nuke on somebody.
Have you do you follow Analytical Check on Twitter?
I do not.
She is on an absolutely anti-Tulsi campaign right now, just rabid anti-Tulsi campaign.
That's pretty much a left spectrum political talking point right now. Just
Well, she's on the right.
Tulsi's she's too right leaning. She's
a Russian plant.
She's a Russian plant. She's an Assad apologist. She'd talk with dictators. Who wants Tulsi Gabbard in place?
Right.
But she's the only one that would say, hey, let's actually think before we just drop a bomb somewhere. Let's actually think about what we're doing.
All right, last question. No statistics, no policy prescriptions, just pure entertainment value. Which of the 24 Democrat candidates do you want to see on the debate stage across from Trump in September next year? Who's going to make you laugh the hardest?
Laugh the hardest. I think most comedically would probably be Elizabeth Warren. just to have her up that, like, I think so much comedy material would sprawl out of that. We wouldn't even have to be sitting and making jokes about it. Just watching it would be the joke.
I have heard that so many times.
Yeah.
Ever since I implemented those questions.
Yeah.
That seems to be the common one.
Yeah, I mean, hey, man, she drinks beer, man. She's one of us. She's just like us.
Well, we talked an awful lot about the debates just a few moments ago. And CNN hosted the last debate, and CNN has been in its own little circus over this past week. Now, the first thing that we have going on is that Don Lemon was in a bar talking to somebody and jammed his hands down a guy's pants.
That one I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got a sexual assault claim against him right now because of that. And, a lot of the defenders are saying that this is no big deal and, this is a guy-on-guy thing. But, I mean, at what point is this just a defense, and at what point would this one of us be eviscerated if we did the same thing?
I would think, like, almost instantaneously. Like, you or I, dead in the water. No defense whatsoever. Written off completely.
What goes through your minds that makes you think that that's okay? Because I've heard about this before. Like, I've heard Don Lemon do it. I've heard of other anchors doing this. It's the Al Franken thing where he was doing the honk honk. Yeah. What breaks in your mind that says this is an okay thing for you to do?
Honestly, like, and if there's truth to it as well. I mean, I won't say anything against Don Lemon
Hmm.
until he has an actual like conviction on it or whatever. But
Right.
uh, I think they're so far removed from normalcy, like they have popularity, they have status, they have money, and I guess for whatever reason they just think that they can do it, and like it's not going to become news somehow, and even if it does, who cares? That's the only thing I can think.
Well, it's the minor one, and I just wanted to bring it up because it's a little entertaining that it's coming up against a member of the media. But
Yeah,
most of what we know about that one is hearsay.
yeah.
This other little story that I have here, we actually have video proof of. A bystander walked up to Chris Cuomo in a restaurant this past week
Oh man.
and called him Fredo. Now, the patron immediately backed it up and said that he thought that it was a nickname because he had heard Rush Limbaugh refer to Cuomo as Fredo, the lesser brother, but Chris Cuomo went into a tirade that, sadly, having lived in Boston for 2 years, I've heard way too many times already, but
Right, right. He
some.
said that that was likened to using the N word on him, didn't he?
Yes, yes, he did. He also said that he was going to push or throw the guy down a flight of stairs for calling him that.
Yeah. And aside from watching that whole video, the most shocking thing to me, for whatever reason, was the fact that it just never occurred to me that he has that thick Italian, like New York thing going on with his voice.
Yeah.
Like when I watched that, I had to double take and go, wait, that's Chris
Yeah, did
Cuomo.
did you did that too?
Yeah, like I paused and I was like, that's not him. And I went to like a CNN clip on YouTube and I listened to him talk because on CNN it's straightforward, this that he's very meticulous. He talks he enunciates everything specifically. And then in this video, it's I'll throw you down the fucking stairs, man.
Yeah.
And I was like, that can't be him. And if that's Chris, if that's you, do that on the air. I'll watch that. I would watch that. I don't want to watch you in this boring, like, this is why Donald Trump is bad. I want you to be up there. Donald Trump is fucking bad. That's what I want to see.
Well, I don't think that would make it past the censors. That's one of the reasons I love being independent, so we can say that on the air. But
Right.
no, that would definitely make. I think that would make ratings climb at that point.
I'm I'm saying, why does Chris Cuomo work for CNN? Just start your own podcast. I would listen to it just to hear you talk like that.
I wonder if his agent will let him come on this show. I'm gonna write that email.
Do
I don't
it.
care if I get ignored. I'm gonna write that email just for fun.
Just for the denial letter
Yes.
that says please never contact us again.
Maybe I can get a restraining order from CNN.
Maybe. Would it be that bad? Would it suck that bad? Not really.
The thing with the outburst, it blows my mind because, I mean, that's not necessarily an Italian stereotype that he was putting across. It's generally an East Coast thing, but I mean, we think of New York when we think of mob violence, even though most of it was centered in Chicago when it was really, really big.
Yeah.
Chicago and LA were bigger sites of mafia violence than New York, but
Yeah.
I mean, to go out there to say that you're treating me with a negative Italian stereotype and then use a negative Italian stereotype and then manage to get it caught on video on top of that is just, I don't even know what to say to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the guy that said it, I believe that he thought what he said. Like, oh, I thought it was your nickname for real. I can believe that, but even so, we know the Fredo connection with the Godfather, right?
Well, truth be told, I've never seen The Godfather.
I believe that is but
That
that's
is the
the
connection,
reference,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
How often? I don't know how often you do it, but I do it all the time. I reference people as fictional characters all the time. jokingly, in jest, just a little ha ha. There you go. So the guy could have had that, blissful ignorance about it and not really known. But even if he didn't, how bad was it? Did it warrant the whole "I'm gonna throw you down the stairs" or whatever? Eh.
Now, it's been a week since we've seen this. If this had been Fox News, we'd have seen a vacation right away. But
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
feel like I already know the answer to this. But do you think Chris gets any repercussions from this?
I think the story's at this point probably dead already, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't. Aside from us talking about it and people going, "Oh yeah, that did happen."
Or people having Fredo on their Twitter handles.
Yeah, yeah, or
I've
Fredo on
debated
it. Yeah, kudos to you guys that did it too
Yeah.
and jumped on it like immediately. But aside from that, aside from like the little internet trolling or whatever, nah, it's gonna die out. We're not. He's not. Nothing's gonna happen from that, and most people are gonna forget about it. The people who are politically inclined enough and nerdy enough, it'll be a little funny joke for us for a little bit. But other than that, no.
All right. Looks like I've got 3 more little quick hitters here. So let's run down the list here. So we're going to talk a little bit of foreign policy. I don't do this very often on the show because mostly what I pay attention to is domestic policy, but we've got a couple of things that popped up here that I think bear talking about. And the first one is very liberty-minded because Hong Kong is starting to protest. They're protesting the Chinese government. They want their independence and they want to be free. Now, of course, the news is showing us the fact that these are very tiny protests and nobody is really participating. It's just a little bit of street violence here and there. But I've got this photo here. Unfortunately, I don't have any video share, but those of you watching back on YouTube are going to see this. Those of you who are listening back on the audio platforms, I suppose I should probably transition that before I start talking about it. I have a picture of umbrellas in a Hong Kong street, a busy Hong Kong street, and I mean, I've got thousands of umbrellas just sitting in front of me here, and this is just one street. So the umbrellas thing was a show of solidarity for Hong Kong because they all unite and they all want to be free. And there's just thousands of them sitting out there. Hong Kong is not a very big place. What have you seen on these protests so far?
The one of the ones that hit me with the Hong Kong protests was the protesters that were out there with the American flags and singing the national anthem.
Mm-hmm.
Blew me away, honestly, because there's a group. You hear that as a talking point here so often about the oppression that happens here in America
Mm-hmm.
and how terrible we are and how much better we could be. But a lot of that rhetoric, a lot of that talking points, you get all of that, and then you have these guys who are actively experiencing some severe oppression,
Mm-hmm.
and they're taking the ideals that we have built into America, and they're using that as a call to people. And it was extremely powerful to me because they're more patriotic than some people here are.
Yeah, that's absolutely the thing. And again, for those of you who are listening back on the audio platform, when Fritz did bring up the fact that we have American flag protests, I actually did have that picture queued up, so I brought that up onto the screen too. I've got Chinese people here in hard hats wearing surgical masks, and they're waving the American flag in the Hong Kong streets. They want to be free, and they look at our country as a symbol of freedom, which it absolutely is. I've heard people talk about the fact that the people of Hong Kong wish they had a Second Amendment so they could stand up as the tanks are being turned on them.
Yeah, I mean, and that is real deal oppression. I'm not saying that America doesn't have its own problems with it, but for all that you hear that talking point, like these people in Hong Kong They're looking up to us. They're like, we want to be like America.
Mm-hmm.
And I chalk it up to you don't know what you got, where you're at because you're too acclimated to it. And, I think these people don't actually really look at what's going on in the world in other places.
Well, yeah, and you don't hear a lot of news coverage on this. It took me forever to find this American flag picture.
Yeah.
Because it was so suppressed and it was pushed so far down to the bottom of the news stack, you never saw it.
Yeah, it's buried down there because Trump went on another golf game or something, or he tweeted something about something stupid, but
I heard some commenters talking about the fact that we could possibly go out and make Hong Kong a territory, which, interestingly enough, I actually looked into Hong Kong because the commenter that I heard talking about, I believe was Matt Walsh, was bringing up the actual area of Hong Kong itself, the independent area. He said it was probably bigger than Rhode Island, which it is, if I remember correctly. And it was also bigger than all of our other major territorial holdings other than Puerto Rico. He cited Guam and he cited American Samoa. From what I understand, Hong Kong is bigger than Samoa and Guam combined.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
Which I thought it was just a city over in China. I didn't realize that it had that big of a size.
Yeah, like when people talk about it, it's one of those things where it probably comes up like that. Hong Kong, oh yeah, some little spot in China, right? But it's actually sizable. It's a decent little chunk out there.
Now, Hong Kong was semi-autonomous until just recently. Am I correct on this? I don't know as much about foreign policy as I probably should at this point.
I believe so because it's not directly China controlled,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean it is semi-autonomous, I guess would be a good way to put it.
Was it on a lease from China? Was what I thought I understood the situation to be?
Very well could be. I mean, I'm not 100% sure on that either myself, but.
Well, the important part is that they want to be free and they want to spread the message of freedom to the world. And it is a world that is very mired down by authoritarianism. So, good on the people of Hong Kong. I wish them the best and I hope they survive the ordeal of the Chinese government.
Yes, absolutely.
But speaking of American territories, there's been another territorial decision that our president has decided that he wanted to do now. A lot of people agree that Donald was joking when he was talking about this, but there have been some indicators that he might have been serious when he brought it forward, including the fact that Denmark said, hell no, we won't go. Donald Trump has proposed buying Greenland.
Who wouldn't want to buy it?
Well, I mean, we'd never run out of ice again.
Yeah, never. Not in a million years.
Well, there are actually some strategic advantages to Greenland, and we do actually have a lease in this in the independent nation. We have a lease up there because one of our first alert missile defense systems is stationed on Greenland.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've already got a foothold there, but, I mean, strategically, it's in a great place, especially if the left continues up their tirade and we wind up in a geopolitical conflict with Russia again, because that all takes place over in the Arctic Circle. But there are resources there. We can mine there. There are minerals there. There's oil there. But the Greenland people and the Danish people who have a mild connection with Greenland, none of them have the resources to go after those resources.
Yeah, that having the means and the capability of doing it. Yeah.
So, do you think it's feasible? First off,
for us to buy Greenland?
Yeah, not well. First, we'd have to petition the government and apparently the Danish government for that. But if we got through everything and took the legal channels for it, is it feasible for us to take over Greenland?
I would have to assume that yes, it is. I mean, I was listening to the Conservatarians podcast. I don't know if you listen to them.
That one I do not.
Okay, so that is John Miller that's Stephen Miller and John Gabriel.
Okay.
And they were talking about how we could just probably show up with lawn chairs and take a seat down there and be like, yeah, this is America now. but is it feasible? I would think it might be drawn out and lengthy and probably a little pricey, but attainable, sure. Why not? Especially considering how you mentioned the resources that come with it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, yeah, that's definitely the route that I wanted to go there. I mean, do we get a return on the investment?
Yeah. Yeah, I believe we would. I absolutely believe we would.
So that's something. And now people are talking, of course, that Trump was serious when he brought this up. It wasn't actually joking with it. And I mean, I could see this proposed.
Yeah, I could see it proposed. I don't. For some reason, I don't believe that Trump brought it up as a serious point. Mm-hmm. I mean, he might have, but I believe more so he used it strategically, kind of like how he always does, where he floats something out there that's kind of off the wall and a little ridiculous because everybody goes, Trump wants to buy Greenland, and everybody suddenly, all the news commentary focuses to, why does Trump want to buy Greenland? And, Denmark said, screw off. It's not for sale.
Yeah.
And I keep saying, by the way, he never asked if it was for sale. He just said he was going to buy it.
Well, that brings up another interesting point on that is because Denmark is getting in on this. Now, to my understanding, Greenland is a fully independent nation, but Denmark does have a claim or a lease to the country. Now, I'm not sure exactly how that works geopolitically, but apparently we do have to clear it by Denmark before we would take it over. Do you know anything on that? Or
I don't have details on that. But just like anything else, you can negotiate anything you want, We can come to the table and bargain with you a little bit. I mean, if it's not us, somebody else is going to come up and try to get it.
Maybe we'll have the 51st state of Greenland. Who knows?
Why not? Why not?
All right, last topic that I got here. This past week on his show, Ben Shapiro was talking about the fact that Kamala Harris was talking about the fact that the biggest problem and the reason that we have a low unemployment rate is because people are working 2 jobs. I've never been able to figure out the math behind that.
No, there probably isn't math behind it. Just honestly speaking.
Yeah.
That's just one of those things that they bring up. People are working 2 jobs,
So, that doesn't affect the unemployment rate.
No.
Ben Shapiro went on his show and he laid out the quote that working multiple jobs is not necessarily a problem that the government needs to solve. If you need to work multiple jobs to survive, you didn't negotiate a good enough salary out of the first job, and that would be a you problem. Now, of course, because everybody's favorite socialist had to weigh in, we actually got a conversation about this. Let's adjust this a little bit here. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, August 14th. One of the most manipulative tactics plutocrats use is convincing people that the systematic issues we face are character flaws instead of policy flaws. Working people aren't dumb or inferior, nor are they why insulin costs $300 or huge companies pay starvation wages. Which that insulin thing is that's been a recurring thing this past week too. I don't know why that popped up everywhere, but...
Yeah, because I remember Beto talking about insulin being like $300 or $400 and an AR-15 being $395. I don't know where you found that AR-15, Beto.
Yeah, but I want to go there.
Yeah.
So Shapiro, of course, went back onto his show and defended his position, as rightfully he should. I don't necessarily believe that he's right, but I believe he has the right to defend his position. But, of course, Cortez will only call Shapiro out on Twitter and won't actually go and debate him no matter how much he wants to give out to her favorite charity. What did you see on this?
Shapiro and AOC go back and forth a lot on each other.
They
Don't
do.
they? Because the challenge the challenge to have her and debate Ben was like somewhat like 2 or 3 years ago, wasn't it?
Well, it wasn't 2 or 3 years ago because she hasn't been in office that long, but it was between the time that she won the primary, but before she got won the general.
Right. Okay. So ballpark probably last year.
Yeah.
I recall it though. I recall it happening. They like to go back and forth with each other though. And to echo your point, Ben Shapiro, I don't necessarily agree with everything that Ben Shapiro says, and a lot more often than not lately, I don't.
Yeah.
But
I can see that. I'm kind of in the same boat lately.
yeah, Ben likes to poke fun at her, likes to engage her in this way, and I mean AOC for her, it's just another day on Twitter. I mean, this is what she does. She likes to engage different personalities. It's almost like she likes to be the center of attention, almost.
No way.
Not what? No, no. But, uh, you know, Ben Shapiro. Like I recall hearing a statement: "If you're working 2 jobs, that's your problem."
Mm-hmm.
I can echo. I can't necessarily echo his sentiment. I mean, at the time I did work 2 jobs at once. There was a time that my wife worked, 2 jobs all at once, and at some point it became, I'm going to stop taking X, Y, or Z work if it's not, benefiting me. I went out, and this is another big discussion that comes up with the thing too, where they'll talk about people working 2 jobs. Well, if we got $15 minimum wage like they want, then people could just work 1 job. But then they also bring up people working jobs that they don't like,
Mm-hmm.
And I work, I don't necessarily through and through love my job, I really don't. A lot of what factors into my job is things like health benefits that I get, or is vacations that I get, and the pay that I get, and the career ladder that's put into it. Those are all things that factor in. I mean, if somebody takes 2 jobs, if somebody wants to work 2 jobs, that's not really the government's business if they are working 2 jobs. It's not necessarily the function of the government to ensure that they don't have to work 2 jobs either.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly it too. I mean, to look at what we're doing right now, we could call this I'm doing 2 jobs because I easily put 30 hours into my channel and I'm not getting any money back out of it.
Yeah. You're not monetized. You're not it's not like you're banking on another bigger paycheck or anything. And it's much the same for me. Mm-hmm. I can go on my podcast. I can do YouTube videos. I can tweet all day long, but I'm not getting any return on it monetarily. I'm doing it because I like doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but you're right. We could call this working 2 jobs almost.
And it would be nice to have the subscribe star payout, but
yeah,
we're not there yet.
Yeah, I'm not holding my breath for it right now.
Shapiro went on his show when he defended his position, and he said that the offer was still on the table, $10,000 into Cortez's charity of choice, for her to come on to the Sunday special and actually sit down and have a discussion or possibly a debate with him. Is that likely?
No, won't happen. This is in the same vein, I guess, as Tlaib in Israel. Here's the deal: you can come in, don't talk about this. Oh, I don't like that. I want to make my point known, and I want there to be controversy surrounding it. So that's what I'm going to do. AOC is the same way. When Ben Shapiro first brought up the debate thing, she said, "I'm not going to go on and enable him."
That's catcalling.
Yeah, it's catcalling. I'm not going to enable him. I'm not going to let him make money off of it, that kind of thing, even though he's going to donate to whatever choice you want.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll never see it. They'll never actually have that debate.
Oh, when she first won her primary, I invited her on. Well, I didn't have my podcast yet. I was still doing solo videos, but I invited her to come on my channel because I wanted to talk to her. I've got a very strict focus on first-time candidates and making a government by the people for the people. Yeah. And I thought that she fit that vein.
Yeah.
Now I kind of wish she would have done it just for the pure entertainment value.
I mean, honestly, yeah. And it's for me. I think to them it's not about that to them.
Well, and I've seen her on Pod Save America before, and I just saw while I was looking for the visual aid that I had up here that she was just on Pod Save America again, and that's where she's going to go. She's going to go on to the places that are going to take her narrative, and they're going to let her spew her narrative without challenging it at all.
It's the good old echo chamber.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to my people. My people are safe. I don't have to stress out about it too much, and that's the deal. And I mean, I imagine if you had somebody come on your show, if somebody came on my show, it's not going to be every last second me challenging you per se. Mm-hmm. You might bring something up, and I'll go, okay, hold on. I might challenge you on certain things, or I might want more, but it's not a hostile environment. It's not an environment for me. I'm not inviting you on just to tear you down. Mm-hmm. That's not what my goal is.
I love how the neighbor decided to mow the lawn right now. Can you hear that?
Yeah. That's just a little bit.
That's awesome. Well, and just to bring up your point, that you actually just made a great transition out of this here, because I'm out of topics at this point, but I mean, I've got the pattern here that I always try to do on this show. I do like to challenge. I like to ask questions. I don't want to really ask gotcha questions, but I also want to know a little bit about the guest too. I had you talk about yourself in the beginning, and now, like I always close the show, because politics is so divisive, we challenge each other, and sometimes there's negative things we have to talk about. I always want to end on a positive note. So I'd like you to describe a hobby that you have that has nothing to do with work or politics. It could be an album that you picked up, a video game that you tried out, or a book you've been reading, just something that helps you unwind while you're not talking about politics or while you're not at work.
I guess...
I know you're running out of that at this point because we're on baby watch, but...
Yeah, we're on baby watch. So, I mean, I did branch out from that. I do have, my little database blog where I blog about how I'm transitioning from not having to take care of somebody to having to, mm-hmm. To becoming a parent, which, that's been something that's been helping me unwind and feeling pretty good. There's also probably two other things. Writing. I love writing, mm-hmm. and I'm working on at least two, I guess you could say, novels, or two series, and that's my go-to. I pull out my laptop and I just start typing out the story that I've been working on for. I've probably been working on it for about 2 years now.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things people ask me, oh, you intend to publish that or whatever. Right now, I just write it because it's fun. I write it because it's fun to sit down and create a story and watch it, unfold. And then the other thing is Legos. I don't care how old you get. I love ripping open boxes of Legos and putting together all sorts. Mostly Star Wars ones, but
it's so weird that you bring that up because recently I remembered all the big sets of Legos that I had when I was a kid, and I went to try and find all of them, and I saw the collectible price tags and changed my mind.
Yeah, you're kind of I had to ask my mom. I was like, were these this expensive when I was a kid? And she goes, oh, yeah. And I said, why did you let me ruin all of them when I was a kid?
Well, I looked at one of the Insectoids sets that I had when I was a kid, and it was $30 back then, and I was so proud because I was 8 and I did enough chores that I could earn the $30 to get it. It's $350 on Amazon.
Yep. Any classic set that you try to get is just, it's going to be a high number. And then even some of the sets today, they're expensive.
They are. Well, that's what I have here. I want to thank the audience for stepping in and listening. If you'd like to finish the conversation with me, you can always find me over on Twitter. That is at EdsBlog Twitter with a one in place of the I. I'm also over on Gab. I'm on Minds. I'm over on BitChute. There's all kinds of places you can find me, and I've even joined the dark side and added a Facebook page, a fan page for this show. You can find me there. All of the links are linked down below us in the description. If you'd like to finish the conversation with my great guest, Fritz here, Fritz, why don't you tell us where they can find you?
You can find me. My primary source of communicating with you all is Twitter. So that's at FritzQS. Facebook.com/the Fritzcast. And I am on Minds, not as actively, though. So but I'll throw it out there. If you search for Fritzcast, you'll find me on Minds. And then if you want to directly, because some of you are shy, you can shoot me an email at fritzcastpodcast@gmail.com. I'll answer you. I'll talk to you on that.
And that will, again, all be linked down in the description below. And if you're watching this over on YouTube and BitChute, while you're going down into that description, you've walked right by the like button and the subscribe button. So why don't you reach down and hit both of those if you like what you saw. Helps YouTube tell people what they should be watching, and it helps us move up the ranks over in BitChute. And you can find the same description over on the audio platforms. We are once again on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. And if you're on iTunes, leave us that 5-star rating and a good review. That really helps us move up the charts. Edsworld is once again partnered with the Freedom Scoop Media Group. This is a Freedom Scoop Media Group production. If you are interested in writing for an independent website, once again, reach out to me, edsblogtwitter@gmail.com. We will get you set up, and we will see if we can get you published. As I always say on this show, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Fritz, you have last word.
Thanks for listening, guys. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you for reaching out to me, letting me come on the show, rant a little bit. If you liked my rantings, check out Fritzcast Podcast. Available on pretty much any platform you can find a podcast. And come along and
subscriber right here.
Yeah. Come along and join me for the ride.
Thank you, everyone, and take care.